really excited to be here tonight, actually. This is a fun thing for me. I have 5 decades, hate to use the 50 word, but 5 decades of experience in museums. I started out in the 70s working in art museums, moved to history museums, and have been working in history museums ever since. So it's a great place for me to be. I think to be able to work in the Napa County Historical Society because I was born here, I was raised here, and so this is the give back kind of moment in my lifetime, and I'm really quite excited about it. And so I came to the museum in 2019 just as a volunteer because I was excited to be part of something like this and to know more about the town I was raised in. And then over time, came onto the board and then came on as the executive director. And then with Kelly, I've had this wonderful experience of the last 4 years of working in doing exhibits. And so this is kind of what we're going to talk about tonight, like behind the curtain.
On the left, this is a photo from 2011, I believe. This is what it used to look like upstairs in our library. We just had everything, everything we had was just out on display in kind of, the dress. We had newspapers, we just had artwork. There's a painting there in the middle of the noise. No, I'm sorry. No, that is the Noise Mansion. And so this is like a very traditional kind of a setup where it's just kind of old stuff that we have with no real theme. And then on the right, we have our most current exhibit that's on display right now, where we really have a narrow focus. It's very curated, like we select things that fit into that narrow focus. And so that's the reasoning between these two pictures, just kind of an evolution from 2011 to present day. So Sheli, can you tell us a little bit about the strategic plan of 2019 and how we started to plan out our exhibits from 2019 forward?
Yeah. I think in 2019, by that time I was on the board at here at the Historical Society, and we realized that we were probably going into a pandemic, and the world was going to change, and so we needed to really think about how we were going to reach out to people and how we were going to position ourselves in downtown Napa. Now, downtown Napa was already beginning to change. We had Archer on Dawes. We were starting to get all kinds of things downtown. And so we really need to think about who we were going to be, because we held an anchor position in the downtown. And so we decided that we would create exhibits twice a year, and these exhibits would be who tells our story. And so that's exactly what we started out with, who tells our story. Who is telling our story? What was the story they were going to tell? And then how could we come back at that story again and again and again and tell it in very different ways? And so you can see the next one we did was Presence of the Past. The first one we did was with, we partnered with Arcadia Press. We did Who Tells Our Story based on all the books that had been written about Napa Valley. In Presence of the Past, we recognized that Napa Valley and the history of photography were one and the same. And so that we could look at, this is an extremely well photographed valley. So we looked at the photographs of time through, I believe, 18 different sites around the valley and looked at them through time. Some of them do not exist any longer, but we were able to look at them. And then we went out and we started to look at the major industry of the valley today, which is wine. But we looked at it in a different way. We asked the wineries to produce 4 to 5 pictures that would tell their story. Not us telling their story, but they themselves telling their stories through 4 to 5 pictures. It was really fun. We had 53 wineries, I believe, in the inn participated. It was just a great exhibit. It was really pretty exhibit. The next one we did was news, because we've had papers in the valley since 1854. And so we really wanted to be able to tell a story about the valley in terms of the news that was coming into the valley and the news of how we perceived ourselves. And so we did that. We really had a really good time with that exhibit. And then we reached out because we'd never looked at an exhibit in multiple languages. And so Hilos Visible, Invisible Threads, is the first time we looked at an exhibit through 2 languages in the valley. And I thought that was extremely important, probably one of our biggest exhibits. And then the next one is, we had never told the story of the valley through women's eyes. And so Shouting Down the Wind is about the pioneering women of Napa Valley. We still have pioneering women today, but we have had pioneering women since really early in the valley, and that I think was extremely important. And then the last one, the one we have right now, is City of Immigrants, which we are telling the story of the valley from 1820 to 1920 in terms of just immigrants. And I think it seems to me extremely important as a topic, I think, for what people get to see. So I don't know, Kelly, does that answer your question?
It does. And I think, specifically with pioneering women, just to bring up the carefulness of the wording. When we first brought this exhibit up and started talking to people about it, they automatically heard the word pioneer, and they assumed it was going to be like crossing the plains in a wagon. And we had to kind of say, no, pioneering is this very different concept, So we had women from 1820 with Juliana Pope, for example, right up to modern day women. It's like they're still pioneering, but you have to kind of be careful with that word choice, and sometimes it's not always what people think. So there's a little bit of an element of surprise in there. So moving ahead, I just want to show the next slide because it illustrates, and we don't have to go in depth into any of these, but it will illustrate how far in advance we're really planning ahead. So Sheli has planned out until 2028 these themes. Sheli,
it's just not me. I just will say that. So you should all
do you want to talk a little bit about, kind of how do these get onto your roster, so to speak? Where do these ideas come from?
So these ideas come from all over. People come into the museum. I can't tell you how many people or how many times a month people come into the museum and say, you should do an exhibit on. And we listen. You might think we don't, but we do. And we really listen. And I take them back to the exhibit committee, which is made up of board members and different members of the public. And they listen to the things and they go, that's a really cool theme. I think that would be great. And so what you are seeing is we always plan 5 years out. So when we finish, with 2024 or starting into 2024, we'll add 2029. So we're always working with that kind of distance in mind, because we need to know who are going to be our partners. What are we really going to, how do we really have to talk up the ideas so people get excited about them. And it takes quite a bit of time. People come to us, for instance, the Ag Preserve came to us and said, 2028 is going to be our anniversary. Could you do an exhibit on this? And and so I took that back, and the committee went, of course, that would be lovely. Now, are these written in stone? And the answer is no. They can move. Anything but beyond 2024 can move pretty easily, but it takes a full year of research. So you should know that these are not simple things that we just throw out there and onto the wall. They really do take a lot of research, and so in planning, we are really talking now between 2025 and 2029, but we have out until 2028. And I think that's extremely important to know because we're looking at all kinds of things, partners and research and a wealth of different things that we all need to put together to do the 2024 exhibits.
On that note, let's talk about the advisory, because the advisory really starts earlier than maybe most people would expect. You know, some people think, oh, there's so much time until this exhibit starts. But, you know, we're already on our advisory for the next exhibit on Monday. So let's talk a little bit about our advisory groups.
Yeah, so we created an advisory group, which is the public. And it depends on every exhibit how many people are in the advisory group, but we try to be expansive and inclusive. So if you have any interest in the resorts, if you have any interest in the health and that concept of health in philosophies of health from the 19th century, if you have a resort now or you're researching a resort, these are the people we are looking to create the advisory group. The advisory group will meet 4 times for 1 hour each time. We will take notes, we will record everything, and we will have discussions that are really tight so that we don't really waste anyone's time. But we talk about the sub-themes. So our next exhibit will be, the working title is Philosophies of Health, but it's really about the spas, that idea that the mineral baths, the mineral waters, the bucolic nature of the valley really was a draw very, very early on. And it was a health draw. So we will talk about what makes the sub-themes up of that. What are the areas of research and the photographs and what are we looking in terms of adverts and deeds and who owned what? And we will be looking at that as this advisory group. We'll be looking at what do we need to put in the cases to enhance the exhibit? What would those objects be? What will the case themes be? What will our partners need to be to make this exhibit really a strong exhibit so that everyone can participate in this exhibit? And we will have those discussions starting in January of this year. We have already obviously had the major theme. We have been talking to people for at least 6 to 7 months already. We have been putting this theme out at least 1 year in advance. And so all of these things have to come together in a very kind of thoughtful way to make sure that we have all of this stuff in order, so that when we turn it over to the next time, we take this advisory group. They only have to agree to do 4 meetings, 4 hours, 1 hour each meeting, 4 times, and then from there we will turn it into an exhibit. So we do this with every exhibit.
And Linda is very familiar, Linda Jesma, because she was on our last advisory committee for this current exhibit, and probably recognizes what I say when I say that sometimes the advisory committee, one person can just, you know, bring something up and it just steers us, you know, we go, okay, you know, steers us into a different place, you know, it's like you really need to talk about this, you know, and it's something that we never even thought of. Just because someone's knowledge is kind of in depth in a way that we didn't really think. So the advisory committee really shapes how we move forward in a big way. So once we're done with the advisory group, as Sheli said, you know, we do 4 meetings, and then Sheli moves into storyboard mode. And there's actually a lot that goes into a storyboard. And Shelley was just saying today, you can see it on the next slide. It's kind of fun. When Shelley first came on and started talking to us, um, she says that we didn't really have any concept of what a storyboard was. She said, we're going to storyboard. And we're like, okay, what does that mean? So, nowadays, after 7 exhibits, Shelley's storyboards are simplistic. You can kind of see just blocks. She's got her color scheme. She has squares kind of in the shape of where things are going to go on the wall. I didn't know this. I guess I didn't absorb this until last year, but our exhibit hall is actually kind of a rhombus. It's not a square. We have one wall on is it the north side?
West side.
The
West side
wall
is
on the
longer.
west side
Yeah,
is longer than the wall on the east side. You wouldn't know it if you were standing there, but it comes into play when you're planning the exhibit, because you have to know that you have that much less space on the side. So on the right side, Shelley has this very, very pretty, this was the first case storyboard that she ever did, and she really had to make it clear, like, this is what it's going to look like, because we didn't know what she was talking about. Like, oh, we're not just going to like throw stuff into the case. We have to we have to plan ahead. So storyboard's very important. And Shelley, storyboard's kind of your thing. What do you have to add?
I think the storyboard is that document that leads us. It doesn't define everything in stone. Trust me. The exhibit. You look at the one in the middle there. That was the original storyboard that I perceived for what's in the exhibit right now. But that is nothing what it looks like right now. But it helps us really understand how many images we can use in a wall, because these are scaled drawings. So we can't like go, okay, we're just going to use whatever we want. We have to really know, because that defines how much of supplies we're going to order, and a whole bunch of stuff. How much is the whole exhibit's going to cost? It is an amazing little piece of information, and everyone gets it. So it's not like it's just for me. I send this out to the whole world, um, and it also tells us all the colors. So if we're going to partner with someone, like in this exhibit, we've partnered with St. Helena Historical Society. All the colors in the one in the middle that says the City of Immigrants, it tells them exactly all the hex colors we're going to use. We are not going to deviate from that. It will tell them in the text blocks that we're going to use, all of the fonts that we're going to use, the size of the fonts, how we're going to put an image in the fonts, how we're going to do this. So it really lays down the pathway for exhibitry. And it takes from the knowledge of data, and Linda Jesmock here will tell you that she came to us with a whole series of, these are pieces of information that I have about a specific individual. They were all typed out. It was gorgeous. Thank you, Linda. And then we took that and we took it back. We made a step back, and then we leaned into it, and we made it into a visualization of what the data was that she had. So we actually took the census, the 1880 census or the 1890 census, and then we took a piece of that census and we blew it up so people could see it and read it. And we created this whole story around all these individuals. So Linda and Sue Zeminski, they created 4 pioneering individuals. They had all the data for them, and then we created that into a visualization. That is done in the storyboarding. And that's what leads me then to be able to say, okay, I need 100 images. I need X number of, so X number of these images are going to be photographs, and X number of these images are going to be adverts from the local newspaper or something. But it really helps me define how that visualization is going to be. And the curators that work under me, because this is the curator's moment, so to say, the curators that work under me, like our intern, Stephanie Perez, she has now done enough of these that she goes, okay, I get it. This is my part, and this is where I'm going to go with it. And she says, then she can turn to me and say, I need 17 images, Shelley. And then I can go, okay, these are the 17 images you're going to get, because Kelly has given me those 17 images. That's extremely important. I don't know that you understand, or anyone can understand, the importance of the research, but Kelly leads the research. And I say, we need these things. Kelly will go down rabbit holes for me, which are stunning rabbit holes, actually. I need pictures of skills, because that's a sub theme that the advisory group has given me. Or I need pictures or adverts for cuisine, and Kelly will take her research team and they will find those. And so then we take those and we bring them out into this storyboard. So, Kelly, does that give you, or you have any other questions, or is that it?
Oh, I have a comment. I mean, it is a rabbit hole. I think we use the term rabbit hole pretty frequently, but it can also be a little more of a like a wild goose chase. And so when we start, especially with imagery, you know, we have a catalog management software that is searchable by keyword. And so specifically because you mentioned skills, you really have to cast a wide net. And that's something that I try to impress upon our volunteers, is cast a really wide net when you're using those keywords, you know, because you can't just look up skill and go, oh, well, nothing came up. You know, you have to look up things like postman, or farmer, or, you know, like kind of think outside the box, like throw everything at it. And then sometimes you're going to find something. Like I found something the other day that would have been perfect for the exhibit, and I didn't catch it in time, you know. So that's just one of those things that always happens. But that's how you find the best imagery, is really just kind of going in and not really knowing what you're looking for, and it just kind of jumps out at you. So that, I will say that about the research process. And it's enjoyable to watch people get comfortable and really dive in, you know, and not be afraid of diving in. The next slide, yes. So here we go. I forget who this family is, Shelley.
The Bickfords.
The Bickfords. Okay. We have a lot of family photographs. We have a lot of school photographs. We have so many photographs of people. And Shelley had mentioned Stephanie, our intern. And so if you've come into our exhibit already, you'll notice that we always do kind of an exhibit in our little bathroom. It's just a way to use extra space, and sometimes it's a way to use the imagery that we didn't quite have space for, or it didn't, you know, it didn't really fit our wall at the time. So it's like kind of just that way to get it into the public view. And so our intern brilliantly said, okay, you know, we have all these families that we don't really have the information, but they're still nice photos of families, you know, they're fun. So that's what we have in that very small annex exhibit space right now, is just family photographs like this one. Looking for objects in the cases is kind of a challenge in and of itself, and I think I'll let Shelley take that one away, and we can talk about what challenge did we have when we first started exhibits? What was the major but we can't because?
Well, when we started in 2019 and we said we'll do 2 exhibits a year, the board's pushback was we can't, because we don't have the objects any longer. All the objects are up at Napa Valley Museum. And so it was like, well, you don't actually have to own the objects to put them in an exhibit. You can borrow objects. It's a 6-month borrow, and we can borrow objects to do it. And so the very first exhibit, we borrowed objects from the Chinese Historical Society in San Francisco. On the next exhibit, we borrowed from the Riverside Photography Museum in Riverside, California. And since then, we've borrowed from everywhere and and in between. So in this exhibit, Kelly, what did you say today? How many objects in this exhibit are not do not belong to us?
At least half.
Yeah, so 50,
Yeah.
and we've had as many as 100% of the objects do not belong to us. But in this
Mhm.
particular exhibit, 50% of the objects do not belong to us. And so we were able to, that's one thing that the advisory group is able to do is say, we want the cases to have these enhancements. We want the case to enhance this subject, sub-theme, and we want this case to enhance this sub-theme. Well, what will we put in those cases? And then people start to come together about what we would put in them. And then where the research needs to go. What do we not have? Well, in this particular exhibit, we didn't have lots of like marriage certificates and things like that. And so we went out to the assessor's office and got those original copies of the marriage certificates. Through the papers and the database of the papers, we were able to go into the papers and find all these adverts in the papers, these advertisements. And then we were able to find the objects themselves, defined by what those subject matters would be. So this is a really great, I think, an expanse of what the research team does. And these are all volunteers, I want you to know. But they come in, they take on something, and they go for it. And they really do an amazing, amazing job. And from there, then we know what is going to be on the walls. We know it's going to be in the cases. We're able to choose the images. We're able to order the supplies. We're able to actually now, because we've like got a storyboard, we're able to create the banners that you see in our exhibits, and also the rack cards and invitations. So those all get done. And they all get done in like March or August. If you think about when we're actually going to open an exhibit, sometimes as early as February. But we're really moving and shaking in that kind of term of time to get all this going, because by the time we get to 1 month in, 30 days before an exhibit, we start to really hop. So, okay. That's, I think, what I've got to say, Kelly. What do you have to say about these things? Oh, our back map. We didn't actually mention about the back map, Kelly.
Yeah, the back map is very important. So when we start thinking about planning, Shelley's talked a lot about it. When do the postcards have to go out? When do we need to have everything printed? We don't start from the beginning. We don't start from now. We start from the end, and we move backwards. And that's how we plan. When's the latest we can get this done? And so, oftentimes someone will come up to me and say, "When did Shelley need that by?" And I'll go and I'll look in the book and I'll be like, yesterday. So yeah, but it's always, we call it back mapping because we move backwards, and then we have those deadlines to get things done. Yeah. And then we move on to building. So one thing that I feel like I say many times every year is, it takes us 2 weeks. Well, it takes us 2 weeks to actually install, where our exhibit hall is closed, that we have nothing on exhibit. 2 weeks. It takes us 2 hours to take everything down off the wall. That's really the quickest part. And it's a little bit like that impermanence. It's like it's up for 6 months. We take it down in 2 hours, then it's 2 weeks to bring up the next thing, which is a pretty quick turnaround, I think. But this is a little bit of chaos. This was News, the Story of Our Lives. There's Shelley on the left, and on the right is Erica Huther, who was one of our volunteers. She put in, 5 days a week. Probably it was a full-time thing, and she was, just on it. This one, this is probably the exhibit that Shelley called the it was the most packed together exhibit because it was newspapers, because we had all these tiny little newspaper clippings. It was really just packed to the gills, and the build is really where we bring the people in who want to do the hands-on. We have certain people who they don't want to do the research. They don't want to just sit in a chair and look at a computer. They want to do stuff. We have one volunteer who every year puts on all of the command strips to hang everything up. She sits, she puts the command strips on. It's a very meditative, in the zone sort of a thing. But so this is the hands-on. And Shelley, what do you have to say about the hands-on?
I think this is the curator's moment, really.
Oh,
I mean,
well, we almost had a hands-off moment with you.
yeah, yeah, I did. Yeah, this time I cut my finger off kind of slightly. But yeah, this is the curator's moment. In this point, we're writing the text blocks. We're getting people. So there's every text block that's written passes through at least 3 to 4 hands to read, so that we make sure that they're written to, that the grammar's right. There's no extra periods, commas are right, etc., etc. And do we find everything? And the answer is no. In fact, we actually have a pool that says who's going to find the mistake first and how soon, because there's always mistakes and we just have to live with that. But we create attribution lists, so every piece of art that hangs on a wall has to be attributed to someone, and we make sure that happens. We print the images, we send out the invitations, and this is when Kelly really gets on the ball and does the press releases. We have a guy who reads our press releases for us, so all this happens at this time. And in this moment, we're just like moving and shaking. Everything is moving really, really fast. And then as soon as we go to the install, as Kelly said, it takes 2 hours to tear down an exhibit. It's really not very thing. But then we have to sand all the walls. We have to scrape them, sand them, and paint them. And then we have to get Elaine to put those beautiful little command strips on the back of every one of our pieces. But first we have to mount all those pieces on foam core and cut them out. And it's messy. I think it's extremely chaotic at this period of time. And I have to say, and Kelly will correct me if I'm wrong, but I have never met someone who didn't come into this room at this moment in time and go, "Are you going to be ready? Are you sure you're going to be ready?" Because I can't imagine how you're going to be ready to open the exhibit in time, because look at the mess. And we all have to nod and smile at the person and say, "We'll be ready. We'll be ready now. Don't you worry." And so it is pretty amazing. We in the last 2 days before the exhibit, we lay out the cases. We don't lay them out before. As you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, that's where everything is stacked on top of the cases. But in the last 2 days, everything is pulled off those cases, and we actually put everything into the cases at one time. And we do this for a very good reason, because there was a moment in one of the former exhibits when Kelly and Monica Hunter, Dr. Monica Hunter, who does all the case design for us, stopped breathing. And that was when a man walked past the ropes that we had stationing off our exhibit, walked in and turned around to look at something, and tripped and fell into one of the case tops and broke it 24 hours before the exhibit opened.
They're plexiglass.
A plexiglass case. Now, the fact that he wasn't skewered and killed is stunning to us in the first place. But the fact that we then didn't have a case top for an exhibit that had to open in 24 hours and we could not get another case top made was a moment where everybody was like, what are we going to do? And I think this is the strength of how we do exhibits, because we have back maps, because we know what we want to do, because we can think it out. Within 5 minutes, we had a solution to the problem. We had someone who was going to bring us that solution. And within an hour, we had the whole thing solved. Not the case top. Case top took another month to have rebuilt, but the point of it was that we were able to continue on really quickly because the team always knew what they had to do what they had to do, why they had to do it, and what they were going to do to get it done. And I think that's an extremely important piece of the kind of thing that we do here. As you can see in the picture, there's people up on ladders. We're putting attribution cards up. Kelly will tell you that the attribution card is our Achilles heel. But we keep working at it. And when it all comes together, and I think this is probably the moment we all excited, this is what it looks like in the end. And we have this done usually by late Wednesday afternoon with the opening on Thursday night, so that we have one day where we can go around and see if we can find the mistake and see if we can solve them. But I think this is an extremely important moment for us, is that this is what it looks like when it's all done.
This is a very satisfying picture, and I do want to pop in for a second. When we were talking about partners earlier, I have to say one of my favorite partners was Porta Cork, because they gave us this cork oak stump that you can see on the left side there. It just looks like it's a round piece of bark. And I just feel like that was so interesting to have, cork of all things. And this comes back to the research. We had one volunteer who we said, what can you find out about cork? And, so she spent pretty much the entire time finding out everything about cork, and she found out about Porta Cork. And then because of that research, we went to Porta Cork and we said, okay, what do you have that we can borrow? And they gave us a piece of a tree, which we wouldn't have even thought to ask about. But they were like, we just have this, we have just the cork. And so we kind of got to talk about the processing of making the cork, and it's this, this very ephemeral thing, but it's so important. But yes, this whole image is just the finished product, and it's this is usually what it looks like about 2 hours before the exhibit premiere. We get to this point where we feel like it's done. We can finally be comfortable with it now. I did want to say, I think we talked about the cases and the borrowing, and I think we're down to the last 2 hours before the exhibit. We get everything ready, and then what do we get to do, Shelley?
I think what you just said is extremely important. These 4 cases represent 4 different entities. So yes, Porta Cork is on your left-hand side here, where they gave us all these things and actually helped us understand cork. Then we had Riedel Glass, who provided all the different glasses and why those are important. We had we also had Natale, which gave us all the staves, the oak staves, and how they were toasted and why that was important to wine. I think that this exhibit, we really had a number of people who really stepped up and helped us understand all these different things. But to Kelly's point, when we really get down to it, this is the moment that makes us the most happy. This is when we open it up to our membership, and they get to come in and look at it and see it. And you can just see that light on their faces when they get to see stuff and really look at it.
Yeah, if you haven't been to an exhibit opening, you should come. It's really fun. And the exhibit openings are exclusive to our members, and I think that's very intentional. It's one of the things that we can offer to our members that is exclusive. It's special. It's always free. We serve you wine. Sometimes we have small snacks. You get to meet people, and really it's that first look. It's the evening before the exhibit opens to the public, and so our members are always, they get to come in. I had a very special moment with the women, the story of our lives, where um, which is what's shown right here. One of our members came up to me and she said, "Thank you so much for putting my grandmother in the exhibit." And I said, "Who's your grandmother?" And she said, "Anna Goodswiller McBean." And I said, "I had no idea, but she was so moved, and we got to have this very special, touching moment where we got to see someone's eyes light up because they had that personal connection. And I think that's what makes the exhibit premieres specifically so special. So if you haven't been, we'll have our next one in April.
So
Um,
one of the things I actually want to say is that this is that moment where we all get to take that big deep breath, but it's not the last moment in an exhibit.
oh,
And yeah, it isn't. Because we then turn around and start it all over again and create a digital exhibit. And the digital exhibit is for those people who can never ever come to this exhibit, will never get to see it, who can't, show up, can't drive, can't do something, can't anyway. So we make a very big effort to put our exhibits up on our website in a way that they can explore the exhibit as if they got to come to the museum. And I think this is extremely important since we've begun to do this. In this last month, 55 people visited this particular exhibit, which was Hilos Visible. Hilos Visible was a year ago. So the idea that 50 people are still visiting this exhibit 1 year later is extremely important. We know that 9,000 people physically came to the exhibit over the period of time it was open. But to see that another 50 people a month keep coming means to us how important this is and how important it is to put exhibits out there in ways that museums may not have done traditionally. But this is really, really extremely important for us to be able to reach out into the community. So our exhibit right now, this is what we're doing right now. City of Immigrants opened in October, and we are pounding it to get the digital exhibit up before Christmas. So Kelly, any other questions that you might have now? I think this is the end of us, but yeah.
well, I mean, I'll reiterate again. It is building the exhibit all over again. It's like we already have the material, but we have an intern right now who is very diligently putting all of these things together. And I mean, I don't know how many of you have done web design or built a website in WordPress, but if you've never done it before, it's a learning curve, So it's the whole thing in a different format, and but we get it done, and it's a good thing that we do because they get to live on in perpetuity, and people can just keep coming in and looking at it, and it's very nice in that way. um Shelley, what was our first, was this our first fully digital exhibit? Elos.
Yes. Yeah, Elos
Yes, it
was.
was.
Well, we had we'd done some things. We played around with presence of the past, and I think we played around with the news story of our lives, but we
Okay.
really did not embrace the concept of digital exhibit until the tourism improvement district, which is hospitality here in town. They backed us to do this, so they have backed us now to do every exhibit since Elos, and that's where the people wonder where does the money go from the tourism group, like from the hospital, from the bed tax, as people like to call it. But this is where it goes. As a chunk of change every year comes to us to be able to do these exhibits and to create a digital side to them.
So on that note, I just want to say consider joining an exhibit committee. As the volunteer and intern coordinator, we are always looking for people who are passionate about something. You don't need to be a volunteer to be on an exhibit committee. You can email me at kelly@napahistory.org. Um, if you're already on our mailing list, I usually put out a call through our e-newsletter to say we're recruiting for this exhibit right now. The next one, of course, is going to be philosophies of health. So if you have an interest in the resorts, the hospitals, the sanitariums, the asylum, keep an eye out. Get in contact with us and come on board. Or if you know somebody who would be really interested, and if this sounds fun to you, join us.
So I want to thank you all for coming tonight because it really does mean a great deal to Kelly and I that we get to be part of this and we get to be something that's bigger than ourselves and celebrates Napa Valley history.